Hello and thanks for joining School of the American Rifle. Today is part 2 of our multi-part series. This video we're going to discuss the cleaning and restoration of this Colt Armalite 601 parts kit. Our previous video was a summary or overview video explaining how we acquired these parts. We discussed some of the evolution of the parts from this variation here until later versions. But this one we're going to focus solely on how we restored the gun to get it to this condition. Unfortunately, I do not have any before photos or any video. One of the main reasons was time constraints. My wife normally runs all of the video work when I'm doing any of these School American Rifle videos. Today I'm running the camera solo because she's not feeling well. We just got over COVID. And she's taken a little bit longer to recover than I did. That being said, we're going to push through with this video. But like I said, unfortunately, I don't have any of the previous pictures. The best way I can describe the condition of this gun was it appeared that it was water damage. Now, I'm not sure if these were carried, since this is believed to be a Puerto Rican parts kit. I can assume that it was exposed to salt water if it was used near any of the areas near the shore, or any water bodies on the island. But it was in really bad shape. There was rust all over the barrel. The outside of the barrel looked like if I had tried to use traditional methods to remove the rust, it would have resulted in having to strip basically all the finish off. And I wanted to try different methods to have the cleanest restoration results. The bolt carrier in particular, which we covered a little bit in the previous video, has pretty bad corrosion in several spots. You see underneath of the gas key or carrier key, there's lots of corrosion. The inside of the gas key is completely corroded in there. Now, we are going to do some better video shots of this when we do our autopsy. So I'll get in there with a bore scope so you can actually get a good view of the corrosion that we have in there. The gas tube, if you look, it's corroded really bad in the back here. And even up front, which we covered in the previous video as well, it's almost eaten completely through right there in the middle of the screen. And that's where the handguards were making contact with it. So I'm not sure if salt water or if corrosive ammunition of some type was used led to this corrosion. But it ate through the chrome on that carrier. And like I said, the outside of the barrel had heavy, heavy rust on it. Now, the results are really good. The methods that we use basically left all of the original finish intact. And then the areas that were pitted, it basically darkened it. And the product that we used is a non-toxic product. I'm going to get to it in a second. But the results are just fantastic. There was rust all over. It was in bad shape. It almost looks like this had a pretty good life. It doesn't look too bad until you get to, like I said, right here around the gas block, front sight base area. This was completely covered in rust though, all the way down, but in this area we had some heavy, heavy rust. One of the first problems that we had when I wanted to clean and tear it down was we could not get the gas tube out. The gas tube was seized inside of here. I took the coil or roll pin out. I used all my traditional methods, heat, penetrating oil. I used Colt oil specifically. I tried using a Mark Brown Customs gas tube wrench. It's a wrench that grabs the gas tube without crushing it. And I tried to use it as sort of like a dent puller to try to rip the gas tube out. What I was really concerned about was, since we had this corrosion right there, I was almost eaten through, that I was going to basically break the front portion of the gas tube off in the front sight base. And since we had so much corrosion going on, my concern then was, since I couldn't get the gas tube out, I wasn't going to be able to spin the barrel nut off because the gas tube interfaces the barrel nut. And then I would be forced to drive out the taper pins and then try to get this front sight base off. My concern there was, again, the corrosion. There was a lot of corrosion around this area. So what I was worried about is if there is basically a bond that has been built up over the years in here from firing that caused the system to be efficient. To seal it up, I was going to have to break that free to knock this off to try to get the gun apart. So I was hoping with every bit to keep this intact and not have to remove it. So I focused heavily on trying to get the gas tube out. I knew that I had to replace that because of the corrosion there. But that is the original gas tube. So what I did was I followed some advice from a friend of mine, Alan Duggar at Springco. He turned me on to this stuff right here, Evaporust. Now, normally in the past, I would use light abrasive methods. I would use things like steel wool, or I would use just wire brushes that were made of nylon. Try to be as little as invasive as possible when I tried to remove rust from things. This stuff is non-toxic, it's biodegradable. It's sort of like a syrup though, so you have to be careful when you're dealing with it, because once you leave it on a surface, it's almost like if you spilled like iced tea or soda on something and didn't clean it up. It gets really sticky. But the stuff is fantastic. I bought this from Amazon. I do believe places like Ace Hardware and other places, smaller hardware stores, carries it. I don't recall ever seeing this in like Lowe's or Home Depot, but maybe they do have it in different areas, just not at the ones around me. So what I did was I followed Alan's advice. I got this, and what I needed was a vessel to drop this in. And like I said, no matter what I did, I could not get this gas tube out. I tried heat, I tried freezing it, I tried everything that I would typically do to try to get something that's seized broken free. I even tried to hit this with a brass punch to try to break free any bond that we had here without marring the surface. So what I did was I have these bins that I use. Move my finger out of the way. That would help, right? This is what happens when my wife's not running video. So, large bin. I put the barrel assembly completely in here. And then I filled it with the Evaporust. And there was just enough in here to fill this to where everything was submerged. And when you use this, you have to be careful that you make sure that you submerge everything. Because if you don't, you'll get some discoloration where one part of it's submerged and it basically neutralizes the rust, and then the other portion won't be even. You want to try to create an even end result. This stuff works so well, it just blew my mind. I'm not endorsing this in any way as far as getting any kind of kickback. Evaporust hasn't told me to use this video. I'm not getting paid for it. The stuff just works better than anything that I've ever used before. It did remove the phosphate parkerizing on it. It removed all of the rust, and it basically just melted it away, and it left a protective finish on it, almost like I had touched it up with something. This is right as it came out of this liquid. I didn't touch up anything. I didn't spray it with anything. Basically just let it sit, took it back out, and all of the rust was gone. I did the same thing for the bolt carrier. Now, the areas there have turned black because it sat in that solvent as well. I'm not sure if solvent's the right word, but it worked extremely well to break up any of the corrosion that was on it. And from what I understand, whatever it does to oxidize where the corrosion was, it leaves like a protective coating. I may be wrong there, but it appears that's what's happening in the areas that were rusted, because I haven't had any rust return. So, love this stuff. If you're on the fence, you can buy it in smaller quantities. But it works really, really, really well. This stuff saved this barrel and this bolt carrier. Now the next part has to do with me getting the firing residue out of this. But before we go on to that, one of the other issues going back to was getting the gas tube out. I tried all those methods to get the gas tube out. And whatever this stuff did inside here broke free the bond that was going on when this was stuck. I simply pulled it out of solution. I gave it a couple taps with a soft mallet. This is what I mean by a soft mallet. It's just a dead blow hammer, plastic mallet. Put my Mark Brown's gas tube wrench on here. Gave it a couple movements this way and this way. I saw it start to move back and forth, which was a great sign, and then out it came. Fantastic stuff. So it worked for something that was seized up. I don't think it's marketed for that, but it got the gas tube out without breaking anything. So this evaporust saved this barrel. It gave it some life. And like I said, it helped restore the bolt carrier. And we were able to get the gas tube out. The gas tube is going to be retired. Not because of dimensional issues, just because it's almost eaten through with corrosion. So evaporust is the first portion of this restoration process. And like I said, I don't have a video of the before or after, but if you want to take my word for it, this stuff is fantastic. From there, we had issues with heavy deposits of firing residue. Now, I'm not a big proponent of scrubbing AR-15s down every time you shoot them, making them white glove. This gun was definitely neglected to the point where it was abused. And like I said, normally I'm not a big proponent of scraping on things, scrubbing at things with any kind of metal brushes, but this was neglected. There was hard carbon or firing residue deposits pretty much everywhere in the gun, to the point where it may have started affecting reliability. We still had full operation of the bolt movement and other areas. It hadn't started binding up yet, but it was definitely neglected. So that's where I turn to my trusted friend here, Berryman's Chem Dip. This is something you can also get at some auto parts stores. I don't think you're going to find it at like Ace Hardware or something like that, but you can get this from Amazon as well. It is a pretty toxic solvent. It comes with a basket in it. And I probably shouldn't be touching it with my fingers, but like I said, running the camera solo today. You put the parts in there, drop it in. I let it sit overnight. I put the cover back onto it. This stuff, pretty toxic. You don't want to be breathing it in all the time, so it's best if you put it outdoors. Don't use it in an enclosed area. Put that lid back on there. But that stuff is fantastic. If you have something that has hard carbon or hard deposits on it and put it in there, it will basically wipe off with minimal effort. Now, this stuff has been sitting for decades on there, so it took a little bit more work for the Berryman carb cleaner to get it out, but it worked great. I was able to just use the back of a wooden swab and pick at the areas that had the hard deposits. I don't use things like scrapers. I don't use metal tools to get those deposits off. If I can't get them off with a chemical method or a non-marring method, I won't do it. So there's not going to be any bronze brushes, stainless steel brushes, anything like that inside of any of my weapons that I service, anything that I own, because I'm not trying to cause additional wear and tear on the firearm as I'm servicing it. The other area that we had to focus on, and we had difficulty, was the muzzle device. When we first got the parts kit, the muzzle device was installed, and I tried to use one of the GI style wrenches, and one of the problems was when I was trying to remove this, the tines here were spreading out, and I was afraid I was going to break them off. So again, I used the same methods before we used the evaporust. I soaked it in Crow oil. I used some soft blow methods where I was hitting this with like a plastic mallet, or what I call a Babbitt bar, which is a lead hammer. Tried all different traditional methods to try to break this free. And since I don't have regular flats on this muzzle device, there wasn't a regular wrench I could use, so I have to depend on these slots here. A strap wrench wouldn't pull it off. I tried everything that I know how to do with all the tools that I have, and it just would not budge. I used Crow oil, I used heat, I froze it. I did everything that I could to try to get that muzzle device off. So I was going to give up on trying to remove it. The reason I wanted to get it off is because when I looked inside of this when I first got it, I stuck a bore scope in here, and this thing had been fired so much and neglected so heavy that there was like ooze. You couldn't even see the crown of the front of the barrel. It was basically like there was black tar that was in the barrel and it was pushed out with a rod, and it oozed out. It almost looked like, if you've ever seen the videos or pictures of the inside of the Chernobyl disaster where the elephant's foot, it's like that radioactive blob. That's what it looked like on the edges of this crown, all the way around it. It was basically just a nasty black blob that was coming out, and you could not see the crown. So I wanted to get that off because I was concerned that it was going to cause a performance issue when we rebuilt the gun. So I was going to give up on trying to take that off and leave it be because I did not want to break this muzzle device. So after we soaked it in the Evaporust, not only was I able to get the gas tube freed, but with little effort, once I soaked it, just popped right off with this, and I didn't even have a breaker bar on it. I just grabbed it like this and spun it free. So this stuff, just amazing. You can see that we have some edges of the threads that don't have a good peak on them, and that was that way after we pulled it off. So the threads weren't perfect when this was initially assembled, but we did get it off, and I did get the muzzle cleaned up. Let's see if I can get a better look at it. After we soaked it in the Evaporust, I then soaked the tip of the muzzle in the Berryman's Chem Dip. And that got the hard deposits off here. From there, the barrel had heavy copper fouling deposits in it. So I'm not making a particular endorsement. This is just stuff that I use because it works well. It's non-etching. It doesn't eat at anything. They might not even make it anymore. It's made by a company called Wipeout. This is Tactical Advantage, and then they sell stuff called Accelerator. Basically, you can use this. You put it in the barrel, let it set for several hours, come back, and then you'll push a patch through. And if you have either blue or green, then you know that you have some copper fouling that was removed. Then you reapply it and do it over again. But this stuff takes a while to work by itself. That's what the Accelerator helps speed up. You put this on the patch, go back behind it with this, and it will take a several hour process and turn into something that can be done in like 15-20 minutes. So it works great. Like I said, I'm not sure if you can still get this, but I still use it until I run out of this. I won't know if there's some still available, if it's still made, but it works very well. And like I said, I use it because I'm not a fan of using any kind of metal brushes. I don't use bronze brushes and borers. I don't use stainless steel brushes and borers. I basically just use a jag and a patch, and I keep on pushing that through until I get things clean. The only time you're going to see me use any kind of any type of metal brushes and a borer is if I have something that is so neglected where it actually has rust that I can't get out, and that was an older method that I used before I knew about this. Now everything's going to get dunked or plugged and filled with Evaporust to try to attack any corrosion. This stuff, game changer. Fantastic. So we had our bore cleaned with this. We had our barrel saved with this. We got our hard carbon deposits off with this. Overall, that is our restoration process. As far as cleaning stuff goes, like I said, I just use the swabs here. You can use plastic picks and stuff too. And then just a general purpose brush. That's it. I'm not doing anything really harsh on it. I mean, the gun's already seen a hard life, so I'm not going to take more abrasive or damaging methods to it. One thing that I wanted to touch upon in the previous video, I was just giving some perspective about some of the historical aspects. Something that I really want to drive home with everyone is I'm a technical guy. I'm a gunsmith. I'm an armor. I'm not a historical expert on the AR. The AR is my livelihood, but I try to focus mainly on the technical merits of it. So if you're really interested in the history of the AR-15, pick up this book. It's expensive, but it's well worth it. This is the Vickers AR-15 guide. It was done so well. There's all these really fantastic photos, historical stuff that's extremely rare. It's excellent work. Well worth the price, even though it is expensive. Larry Vickers, whose name is attached to this, recently announced that he has cancer. So we're going to keep him in our prayers. Hopefully Larry pulls through. He's a fighter, so I think he'll beat that stuff. But I really respect the man's work. Fantastic book. If you're interested in historical stuff, pick this up. You can also read things like The Black Rifle. There's another channel on YouTube that is focused heavily on the historical aspects of different stuff. That is Small Arms Solution, Chris Bartucci. So there's guys who know a lot more about the historical stuff than I do. So in the previous video, if you picked up something that was misleading or incorrect, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to acknowledge if I made an error. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the historical stuff. I just give the best perspective that I have at hand. And I'm always a student myself, whether it be the technical or the historical stuff. But if you are interested in the history stuff, pick up this book. Fantastic book. And again, I have no stakes in this. I don't know Mr. Vickers. I just respect his work. Fantastic book. If you like the AR-15, this is a must. So I hope that you found this video somewhat educational. Like I said, we don't have anything in action. But if you trust what I'm saying, this product here was a game changer for me. This stuff is used constantly by me. Some people say to use something like CLR. I've been dabbling with it. I still go back to this. So, and then like I said, as far as bore cleaning goes, and I use this for all my firearms, not just ARs. Wipe out an accelerator. So if you have something that's sort of stuck in place, you need to clean something that's been neglected, you need to restore something, give some of these things a shot. You can reuse this stuff too. If you read the instructions, it'll say you can keep reusing it until it gets to a certain saturation point. So I'll keep using this stuff. Love it, love it, love it. No endorsements, no kickbacks from any of this stuff. Just wanted to share how we brought this, this 601 back to life. Our next video, we're going to do our distressing of the lower receiver, or we're going to do our physical / autopsy. I can't decide what we're going to do first. I think we have this one set up next for distressing, and then it's supposed to be the physical and autopsy. And if we turn around over here, here's our instrument table that we'll be using in the physical autopsy video. So lots and lots of things we're going to go over on the physical. It's probably going to be one of my longest physicals, because we're going to go into great detail when we're looking at things. We're going to use the bore scope to look inside of the gas key and the bolt carrier. We're going to look inside of this well-used barrel. If I had to guesstimate by what I've seen so far in this barrel after cleaning it, I would have to say that this barrel has in excess of 30 to maybe 50,000 rounds, if not more, through it. And this was previously a machine gun, so it saw some hard life. But we're going to get into those technical aspects in a separate video. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next one.